Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
There's no understanding that. I'm sorry, there just isn't. I get it, okay? Let me address the people who won't, or who don't like people like me, okay? I'll address you first. I get it. It's a simple solution to a complicated problem. We all hate this stuff. We hate it. It's so much closer to home for reasons that I think are entirely personal. I think it's to do with the age of my children and the things that we've done together recently. I'd love to believe there was a simple solution that could reassure me it could never happen again. It could reassure me it could never happen to me or mine. And that is the appeal of thinking that you can chalk it up as all Muslims are part of the problem, or if we do this and intern people and shut down mosques and turn hate upon haters, then everything will get better and we'll be safe. And I understand that. I get that. I get the deep desire for a simple solution to a complicated problem. But they're never right. Complicated problems never admit simple solutions. The more complicated the problem, the more complicated the solution. Courage and good sense can diminish events like this. People who have neither should probably stay quiet for a moment. Just for a moment. Because what we have to do today is recognise what happened in Manchester last night and who it happened to. Forgive me if this offends you, but I'm more interested at this point in time, and we've got 3 hours together today, so I promise it won't be exclusively from this angle that we examine events. I'm so much more interested in who it happened to than in who did it. I think, believe it or not, I think Donald Trump got it right this morning. I think to describe this, I'm so sorry, I'm going to struggle today to moderate my language. To describe this man as a loser rather than a monster is to cut to the very heart of the problems that our civilization faces. Because terrorists love nothing more than to be cast as epic figures who have us quaking in our boots, who have us abandoning our values, who have us turning our backs on everything that we're supposed to hold dear. All the things that mean our 9-year-olds can go to gigs in silly little shorts and T-shirts and dance around like loons for the whole night. All of those things, the temptation is and the desire is of men like him to make us question what we hold to be self-evident, to make us question what we hold to be true. And I can't do that. I will never do that. But you can't, on a day like today, get past the thought that it could have been you. It could have been yours. So when Donald Trump says evil loser, and when he employs clumsy, but I think absolutely apposite language, it's easy to snigger, it's easy to laugh, it's easy to forget all the other interventions he's made on recent issues that have been absolutely absurd. But he's right. They want to be called a monster. And I understand the temptation to do what they want. But I'm not going to do what the terrorists want today. I appreciate some people want to. I'm not even going to sit in judgment on you. I'm not even going to call you names or suggest that you're somehow playing into their hands. I'm just going to tell you I'm not going to do what they want. I'm not going to sit here and question my own belief systems. We're right. We're on the side of right and we're on the side of righteousness. And to combat evil by abandoning right and abandoning righteousness, to combat evil by diluting what you know to be true, by diluting what you know to be valuable, to combat the sheer bloody horror of what happened to those children last night by being horrible to other people who had nothing to do with it. It's just not an answer I can get my head around, but I completely understand why some people do. It's terrifying to think it could happen to you, and if somebody stands up and says, here's a way of ensuring that it couldn't, hey, it's a hell of a lot easier to sell a product like that than it is to sell the grim truth that courage and good sense will eventually diminish these sort of events, but you can never get rid of them entirely. The ideology will shift. It's shifted from Northern Ireland to the Middle East. It will shift back again over centuries. It's shifted across continents. The ideology that sees the senseless murder of innocent people as somehow advancing or proving a point is as old as humanity itself. And it's courage and good sense we fight it with. Not more hate, not more anger. I'd dance on that man's grave if I could, and that's the grimmest thing about a suicide bomber, isn't it? Is that you're denied even that sense of, vengeance. sue me if you don't think that vengeance is an appropriate feeling to have, a desire for vengeance at the moment. Reading about Ian Brady a lot this week. Man who committed his vile murders against children just 2 or 3 miles up the road from that concert hall in Manchester, and whose psychology has been picked over by trick cyclists and experts since he passed away. And you never get a penny drop moment. You never reach a point, do you, where you go, oh, I get it now. That's just senseless murder. Absolutely senseless. Committed by a loser, to coin the word that the President of the United States somewhat unexpectedly elected to use today. So can we do it parenting? Not, I listen, the obvious question, how do you explain something like this to your kids? I don't know. We got woken up in the middle of the night because my wife files for foreign news organisations. Just stared at social media with a sense of absolute horror, grimness, and then I couldn't go back to sleep. Got up quite early, went to watch my daughter sleeping, which I don't do very often. I think I'm probably going to do it a little bit more often in the coming days. Just went to watch them sleeping, and I tried to imagine circumstances in which that beautiful innocence would seem like a really good target for death to prove some warped ideological or political or religious point. I just tried to imagine how anyone could look at beautiful innocence like that and feel it feeding their hatred and their anger. And I can't, any more than I can understand why Ian Brady did what he did. But I've got 2 little girls, and they love going to concerts, and they love the programme that Ariana Grande starred in, the Notorious on Nickelodeon. They love a lot of the stuff that is kind of emblematic of modern popular culture. If you don't know, and a lot of us don't, because it'll depend on how old your kids are or whether you have any at all, it's the equivalent of the Mickey Mouse Club from when we were kids, the programme that she starred in, the audience that she has. And she's a breakthrough pop star, so there'll be adults who enjoy the music, but the tribal loyalties, that's like the Mickey Mouse Club. You know, it's children's television that turned her into a star. Children's television at its most simple level of entertainment. That's what turned her into a star, and that will be a large part of what drew thousands of children to that concert last night. So yeah, there will be time in the coming days and possibly the coming hours to pick over the slightly more obvious questions. But I'd like to start with, what do you do as a dad or a mum? How do you deal with this? How do you cope with it? How do you play it? If you're close to the story, as ever on this programme, you'll be offered a very warm welcome and a comforting ear. But as a dad, I can't get past the thought that I was bopping away at the O2. And you know what it's like. You don't watch the show quite often, do you? You watch your own children enjoying the show. How many parents there last night won't have been watching the stage? They'll have been watching their little girls dancing in absolutely undiluted glee. That's the thing. You don't get that as you get older. That absolute sense. Do you remember what it was like? That sort of almost transcendental happiness. They can't believe they're actually there and up on the stage. Oh my God, it's actually them, it's actually her, it's actually him off the telly. I can't believe I'm here. And they turn to each other and they hug each other and they jump up and down and they've got their funny little tattoos on their faces and their special T-shirts, and Dad's bankrupted himself buying a couple of Cokes, a bag of popcorn and a programme, and it's just pure happiness. Pure happiness. And you watch your children, you don't watch the stage. And then someone comes along and blows himself up and takes as many of these children with him as he can. And we're supposed to be able to explain this to our children. I don't know that I can. I don't know where you even begin. There are some evil people out there, they know that, but not at a concert full of kids. You know, when the July the 7th attacks hit the city that I've called home for all of my adult life, we were on the wireless together, and a sign went up on the motorway gantries outside the city. It said, "London is closed, turn on your radio." And I've never forgotten that, because it means that on days like today and at moments like this, there is a desperate desire to reach out. This was before the days of social media, and radio arguably played an even bigger part than it does now. And you're aware of that sense of responsibility, and you know you're supposed to have something profound or meaningful or helpful to say. And most of the time we manage. But occasionally you just don't know where to turn, you don't know what to do, you don't know what to say. Except this. we've got to be stronger together. Everything is stronger together. Everything. The more unity there is, the less division there is. The more love there is, the less hate there is. The more calming influences there are, the less power the influences of hate and anger will have. And yet, you can't tell people they're not allowed to feel hate and anger today. You'd have to be made of rock not to feel hate and anger. And the thing that we struggle to cope with, I think the thing that we perhaps struggle the most to process is the man is dead. So where do we put that hate and anger? The temptation to throw it at people who had nothing to do with the events in Manchester last night must be overwhelming for many people. I don't think hating them's going to help either. You can't sit here and say love conquers hate. Oh, but by the way, I hate all them over there who don't see the world as I see it. And if we at 45, 55, 65, how old are you? Oh, you look a lot younger, madam. If we can't process it, if we can't make sense of it, then is there the vaguest chance that our kids can actually do a better job than us because they come at things so clean, so clear-headed and so pure of heart? They can actually process these things in a way that we can't. Maybe the answer to the question I'm asking you now will be, let your children help you, as opposed to you feeling this overwhelming need and this epic sense of impotence about your ability to help them. The phone lines are open. You know the number, 0345 6060 973. I realise, as I head towards the travel news, I may have just excluded anybody who's not a mum or a dad, which is absolutely not my intention. But every now and then, and I think this is possibly the first time in all the years that we've spent together, I can't get out of the personal into the public on this one. I just can't get away from that still fresh memory in my mind of watching my 9-year-old and her classmate jumping up and down at the O2. It's about 10 nights ago, and thinking it could so easily have been us. That's what the adults have to process. How on earth will the children even begin to understand? It's 10:16, and 22 people dead in Manchester. The injury count continues to rise, and please God the fatalities don't too, but well, the odds are they probably will. 20 minutes after 10 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I don't have any pat questions for you, really. I don't have any well-meaning inquiries or invitations to take out the fear and the anger that we all feel on people who had nothing to do with events last night. But I do just have a dad's sense of impotence. That's the worst thing about being a parent, isn't it? It's the thing that we keep in abeyance all the time. We keep in denial all the time. That we can't always look after them. We can't ensure that they'll always be safe, short of them locking them in a cotton wool lined box and feeding them through a hole. There's nothing we can do to insulate our babies against the horrors of the world. Some of them accidental, some of them natural, some of them human. And events like the ones in Manchester last night have brought it home, for me at least, as a 45-year-old father of two, on a scale that I didn't even know was possible. So we're going to spend the rest of this programme talking to each other. That's all. Hannah is in Shepherd's Bush. Hannah, what would you like to say?
Hi there, I'm a mother of four. Solely love Ariana Grande. My children love her. We watch her on Sam and Cat. I mean, a majority of the children that would have went to that concert would have been, you know, from 8 years onwards to about 18. A few probably adults that would have been, obviously, that loved her as well.
I'm never going to complain again, Hannah. I'm never going to feel sorry for myself again or make jokes about being the oldest person in the room. I'm going to keep going. I'm not going to let them turn me away from these places, but I'm never going to moan again about the pleasure and the privilege of watching my babies dance at a gig like that.
That's right. You know, I mean, it's fun. They go there to have fun. You know, what was going through this person's mind, thinking that it's okay to go and do that. Now, you know, obviously religion always comes into it, and you know, he was a Wahhabi or whatever it was. That
it seems incredibly likely. We'll bring you all sort of developments and confirmations as the
no religion
story develops.
Behavior. I mean, especially Islam. I'm a Muslim myself, and there's nowhere in our scriptures that states that you can go. In fact, it actually says that women and children are not to be hurt. Not to be hurt. So I don't understand how he was able to go into this venue.
I know, I hear you. I suspect, and again, I'm conscious of speculation.
So didn't they have any security?
It probably happened outside. You've been to things, the journey from the venue to the station, the big crowds there. Right. And while I respect your religion and your faith, I'm focusing today on the things that we all have in common, because I don't want someone else to ring in and say, well, I've read the same holy book and I found some passages that prove you are allowed to kill children. It's just
most definitely. No, there's no way that you're allowed to kill children,
someone
and
will
I know
probably-
for a fact
Okay.
that you're not allowed to. But we'll keep it away from there. As you said, I'm calling as a concerned parent, and for anybody out there that goes and does stuff like this to children, they're very, very vulnerable in this situation. They're just kids. They're innocent. There's nothing that they've done to the world for them to go out and do this, and then afterwards it's blamed on Muslims and all of this terrorism, and you had the guy earlier on saying that basically if you just looked on the internet, then basically they should put them in a camp. I mean, that's
Well,
ridiculous.
I'll take responsibility for what happens on this program. I can't really take responsibility for things I haven't heard. But again, actually, no, I will take a little bit of responsibility for that. There are some people who live on hatred. Some people that get paid for spreading it. But I don't think it helps to sit in judgment on people who are just frightened and angry and looking for a solution. As a dad, you're a mum, Hannah. If you were slightly differently constituted psychologically, someone stood up and said, here's a way that your children can be safer, and it involves being brutal and it involves being vile to other innocent people, but your children could be safer, you can understand the attraction of that, can't you?
I totally understand that, but that is not the correct way. I mean, if you're going to go on the internet, anybody who browses on the internet or has anything, I mean, prominently, if it was a Muslim and
They're looking for answers. They're looking for ways to feel safe, looking for ways to think that their children won't be next. And to as someone like Sadiq Khan says, the terror threat is a constant that we live with in a city like London at this point in history, just as it was in Manchester when the IRA thankfully failed to kill anybody after detonating the biggest bomb that's ever been set off in Britain in peacetime. These are constant threats that we live with. It would be very, very, very seductive for someone to stand up and say it doesn't have to be like this. Andrew is in Islington. Andrew, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. How are
Hello,
you?
mate. Very well. Well, obviously not, but thanks for asking.
No. My partner's Muslim. She was in tears this morning, and I'm, similarly upset. The constant call for a reaction from the Muslim community, and you've seen it on news this morning and things like that. To your point about parenting, I think what people need to realise, there is no Muslim community. There are Bengali Muslims, there are Somali Muslims, there are Turkish Muslims, there are disparate groups of Muslims as there are different political groups and different white European groups. What I think people need to understand is that things like this should be tracked, and as you're saying, from a parenting aspect and from a family aspect, when people see changes in people in their family or even in their friends, that's when these things need to be nipped in the bud. There's nothing a community can do. I know there are things...
And the condemnations have been issued. The Muslim Council of Britain have put out a very unequivocal statement describing it as evil and criminal and doing something I did this morning, actually, and sort of almost positing the existence of hell and hoping that hell exists so that the person responsible for this crime will rot there for the rest of eternity. But it doesn't matter because you can never feed the appetite for whatever it is that these people seek. You can never fulfill or sate the hate of someone that's done something like that, and equally, you can never properly comfort the people who are looking for a simple solution. That seems to me what I've learned, having done stories like this many times than anyone should have to. The desire to find a simple solution does not make someone evil or hateful or bigoted or racist. It probably makes them wrong, though.
Right, and that's the thing. Some people want revenge. Some people want justice. You cannot kill an ideology. There are people saying some really intemperate things at the moment. And the fact is that this person is a loser. I very much doubt he was a religious scholar, James, and I know you know that. At the end of the day, we're a formidable country. We're better together. But people need to understand that there are problems in families, and it's not something that can be addressed at a community level in the same way that you wouldn't address any other societal issue at a white level or an Afro-Caribbean level. It's not how these problems are solved, and there is no simple solution.
It's hundreds of thousands of individuals in family groups and in little units, and I mean the massive majority of whom are not going to have anything like this beeping on their radar. But I guess I guess the tough thing is that even the slightest beep should be reported. And listen, just to take Andrew's point a little further about communities, whatever that word means in the current context, you go into any community where criminality is rife, and the idea of grassing is anathema. It's the worst possible thing you can do to go to the authorities, and that's as true of sort of East End gangsters as it is of Islamist fundamentalists. So that's something we have to address together. Again, the things we have in common, the things that we share, are more likely to help us out of holes like this than the things that drive us apart. And being frightened of dobbing in a family member, being frightened of dobbing in someone you know is something that everybody feels, and yet it's something that everybody has to resist. Mark's in Glasgow. Mark, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James.
Hello, mate.
I listen to the show every day, James. I love it. I find myself shouting at the radio, agreeing with you, disagreeing with you. But I just felt this. I don't normally phone in. I felt sort of compelled to phone in today. I woke up this morning, saw the news, just shocked. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I've got a young daughter who's 13, just turned 13. I've got a son who's 12. And my daughter likes Ariana Grande and people like that. And the fact that she's now 13, you know, and the relationship that we have is a little bit fraught. I'm sure there's parents out there will understand that. She used to look at me with, you know, adulation and still get respect, but yeah, she looked up to me. But
she thought you were Superman. She thought you were Superman, and she knows you're just Dad.
Absolutely, not so much now. However, things are a little bit fraught. But I went in this morning and I just sat in her bed and told her that I loved her, and you know, no matter what happens, you know, I'll always love her, because that could have been my daughter, it could have been my son. And it's horrific, and I can't help but think about the parents today and what happened in that foyer. That must have been absolutely horrific, that foyer. Horrific. I don't even want to think about it.
No.
So I think this is today of all days, I just think we should be loving each other, putting our arms around each other, forgetting about, you know, I've got political viewpoints and I fill out my friends on often, but today, the next few days, you know, put our arms around each other, because it's going to be tough.
I think you're right, mate. I appreciate the call. Time now is 10:30. And I'm sure you're across this already, but you know how you just want to try to do something that might possibly be helpful. If you are concerned about someone who is missing still after last night's atrocity, then Greater Manchester Police have issued this number, 0161 856 9400. That's 0161 856 9400, and it'll be up on the LBC website as well. 10:50 is the time. The problem, I suppose, with offering a very rare word of applause to Donald Trump is that he has a remarkable form for saying the polar opposite tomorrow of what you praised him for today. But I do think he captured something that no other leader has managed to capture when he described the person or the persons responsible for the Manchester terrorist atrocity as evil losers. Evil losers. He said he wouldn't call them monsters. It's weird because people who are drawn to the politics of Donald Trump, or at least the pre-election politics of Donald Trump, which seems to have been a rather cynical and highly successful attempt to harness some of the sort of hatreds that run around the world. People who were quite drawn to that are probably going to have a big problem with this. The idea that these people shouldn't be treated as monsters, we shouldn't allow them to cow us into submission or into surrendering our values. They're not going to like that. Which again, I suppose, speaks of his mercurial nature. I've got 2 phone lines free. If you've been listening all morning and struggling to get through, now's a good time to have another crack. We're not really throwing up questions in the traditional sense that we do on the programme. I'm speaking to you today, as I often do, actually. I never shut up about my family, do I? But I really am just speaking to you as a dad today. I'm not being a very good journalist. I'm not keeping my emotions out of my conversations. I'm not keeping objectivity front and centre. I see this story entirely through the lens of the concert we attended last week. We watched my friend James McVeigh, who you've met here on the LBC station, performing on stage at the O2 in a room full of kids who probably would chalk that up as among the best nights of their life. And that's what those kids in Manchester were having last night. It costs a lot of money to go to these gigs. It's a big deal. It's birthday money stuff. It's treat stuff. And it is, we're looking forward to it since Christmas Day stuff. Got the tickets last year stuff. And to have that, I can't understand the targeting of children. I never will, and I'm sure I ever want to. 10:52 is the time. Shazia is in Plaistow. Shazia, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello, mate.
Thank you for opening your lines up today and allowing people to talk. My head just cannot process it. Like you just said, my daughters went to a 1D concert a couple of years ago at the O2, and the whole day was about her hair, her nails, what she was going to wear, what she wasn't going to wear. The countdown started from Christmas once she got her tickets, this many days, that many days. I couldn't imagine it. I could not imagine. And when she came home, she was so excited. We had to sit up till 2 o'clock in the morning, listening to every single little detail. And he done this and he done that, and he kind of looked up at our way. And just to think that I could have been a parent that got a phone call or a knock on my door, I cannot imagine what the parents are going through. It's just all so... I can't process it. I don't know how to process it. How do I talk to my children about this?
Well, you tell me.
My 15-year-old, I had the news on this morning while we was getting ready for work and school, and she said to me, Mum, this isn't a terrorist. It's somebody with a mental illness. She went to do it at the end of the show. How did they see it? But what went through the person's head? They must have planned when they were going to do it. The children are the most excited.
That would probably have something to do with security as well. In the throng of people as everyone exits the building, is the security operation is over, isn't it? It's designed to stop people taking things into the building. It's not. I was thinking about what it's like when you move at a snail's pace from the door of the venue to the nearest station or the nearest tube, and that I guess is an area of vulnerability, particularly at sports grounds, that is going to have to be. It's going to have to be looked at. How are you going to play it when they ask to go to another concert, do you think? Or is it too soon to ask you that?
Do you know what? She was 13 at the time, and it took me a lot to... Because I've been to the O2, and it's quite crammed, and it's quite sort of strange way of sitting, and it always doesn't look safe to me. You can get that little bit too excited and topple over or something like that. Yeah. So I did think and think. I had lots of thoughts go through my head before I actually booked her tickets. And now I couldn't imagine me ever letting my children go to a concert.
Well, you've got to get over that, haven't we? We both have, because I feel the same way that you do, and yet that is, in a way, again, it's a little bit pat, it's a little bit trite to talk about falling into their trap or doing what it is they want us to do, whoever they are, because this particular character, of course, is as dead as a dodo, but I'm not going to let that joy, that untrammeled joy, that happiness that you described when your daughter got back from a One Direction concert, I'm not going to let him steal that from my children.
Her voice had gone. She'd screamed so much. Her voice was gone. And she was straining to tell us all about it. In your head, you're kind of thinking, I've got work tomorrow.
Of course I do. Of course I do.
You're thinking, oh, no, let me listen to her excitement. She's not going to go to sleep, so let's join in. And it was her birthday and everything. But I cannot imagine. My head just will not process this. I mean, there's been lots of programs about this. It's because it's children. How? Yeah. How does somebody do it?
No, and that is something that pretty much everybody is going to be feeling that. You look for common ground on a day like today, and although some people go for calm and compassion, other people go for fury and fear, and most of us fall somewhere between the two. The one thing you can all agree on is the actual targeting of children is almost unbelievable. Almost unbelievable. Something else that's almost unbelievable that an awful lot of you are asking me about, and I don't want you to think that I work for an organisation that would in any way prevent me or stop me from saying what I feel is almost obviously one of my colleagues here at LBC has taken this opportunity to reiterate the rhetoric of the Holocaust and call for a final solution to be visited upon our fellow civilians. An awful lot of you are asking me what I think about that. Well, you don't need to ask me what I think about that. Take however disgusted you feel and then add the shame of having to share a professional platform with it. That's how I feel. So I don't have the power, unfortunately, to do anything about it, but feel free to get in touch and I'll put you in touch with the people who do. Other than that, I don't know what it is I can say when someone is prepared to employ the most vile of thoughts and language in a desperate attempt to stay relevant and get noticed. I've always argued that the best thing you can do is refuse to notice, and refuse to respond, and refuse to rise to the bait. But I can't really use social media at LBC today. So we're sort of around about 1 million listeners on this programme, and I can't use social media because it is almost entirely taken up with people objecting and rejecting the kind of rhetoric that springs from a mind that must be as dark and as poisonous as it's possible to imagine. So I don't know what to say to you. Yeah, I share all of your disgust, but it's worse in a way. And maybe I should find it within myself to walk away from this microphone now in protest, but I'm never going to do that. I'm sorry. I value my time with you too much to let any monstrous self-publicist prevent me from doing a job that I love. And yeah, maybe that's not the moral path to take, but that's the path I'm taking, and I thank you for asking. Ed's in Plymouth. Ed, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Thanks for taking my call.
You're very welcome, mate. Sorry you had to come in on the back of that rather unexpected intervention, my friend.
Yeah, well, I've got family up north in Lancashire, in the Greater Manchester area, so it's fairly personal there. But also, I think the main thing is to remember that, and I know someone says this every single time, but on the whole, this is not the majority of Muslims. There isn't, there's the Muslim Council of Britain have condemned it, but there's so many different sects of Islam anyway.
But the temptation
to remember that this is a small minority of people, and if it is ISIS who have done this, they'll claim responsibility for banana skin on the PM's doorstep.
True,
but they want to divide us. They want it to turn into a race war where people in Britain are trying to attack Muslims and create a race war.
And I'm not going to sit here and hate the people that are going down that path. I refuse to. I refuse to hate anyone except the people responsible for atrocities like this and the people who either applaud or feel comfortable with it. I'm not even going to hate the people who fall into the trap of hating, because I think it's fair to say that they're just even more desperate to believe that there's a simple solution to this cornucopia of complicated problems. There isn't a simple solution, but I sometimes wish I could turn bits of my brain off and believe that there is. Even if that did lead me down a fairly hate-filled path, it would at least be a path that I felt had a light at the end of it. Thank you, Ed. It's 11 o'clock. I'm now to Downing Street, where Theresa May is addressing the nation.
Emergency Committee Cobra, where we discussed the details of and the response to the appalling events in Manchester last night. Our thoughts and prayers are with the victims and the families and friends of all those affected. It is now beyond doubt that the people of Manchester and of this country have fallen victim to a callous terrorist attack, an attack that targeted some of the youngest people in our society with cold calculation. This was among the worst terrorist incidents we have ever experienced in the United Kingdom. And although it is not the first time Manchester has suffered in this way, it is the worst attack the city has experienced and the worst ever to hit the north of England. The police and security services are working at speed to establish the complete picture, but I want to tell you what I can at this stage. At 10:33 last night, the police were called to reports of an explosion at Manchester Arena in Manchester city centre near Victoria train station. We now know that a single terrorist detonated his improvised explosive device near one of the exits of the venue, deliberately choosing the time and place to cause maximum carnage and to kill and injure indiscriminately. The explosion coincided with the conclusion of a pop concert, which was attended by many young families and groups of children. All acts of terrorism are cowardly attacks on innocent people, but this attack stands out for its appalling, sickening cowardice, deliberately targeting innocent, defenseless children and young people who should have been enjoying one of the most memorable nights of their lives. As things stand, I can tell you that in addition to the attacker, 22 people have died and 59 people have been injured. Those who were injured are being treated in 8 different hospitals across Greater Manchester. Many are being treated for life-threatening conditions. And we know that among those killed and injured were many children and young people. We struggle to comprehend the warped and twisted mind that sees a room packed with young children not as a scene to cherish, but as an opportunity for carnage. But we can continue to resolve to thwart such attacks in future, to take on and defeat the ideology that often fuels this violence, and if there turn out to be others responsible for this attack, to seek them out and bring them to justice. The police and security services believe that the attack was carried out by one man, but they now need to know whether he was acting alone or as part of a wider group. It will take some time to establish these facts, and the investigation will continue. The police and security services will be given all the resources they need to complete that task. The police and security services believe they know the identity of the perpetrator, but at this stage of their investigations, we cannot confirm his name. The police and emergency services have, as always, acted with great courage, and on behalf of the country, I want to express our gratitude to them. They acted in accordance with the plans they have in place and the exercises they conduct to test those plans, and they performed with the utmost professionalism. 400 police officers were involved in the operation through the night, and many paramedics, doctors and nurses have worked valiantly amid traumatic and terrible scenes to save lives and care for the wounded. Significant resources have been deployed to the police investigation, and there continue to be visible patrols around Manchester, which include the deployment of armed officers. For people who live and work in Manchester, there remains a large cordon in place around Manchester Arena and Victoria Station, which will be in place for some time. The station is closed and will remain closed while a detailed forensic search is underway. We know that many friends and relatives of people caught up in the attack are still trying to find out what has happened to their children, brothers and sisters, parents and loved ones. So please, think of those people who are experiencing unimaginable worry, and if you have any information at all relating to the attack, please contact Greater Manchester Police. The threat level remains at severe. That means that a terrorist attack remains highly likely. But the Independent Joint Terrorism Analysis Centre, which sets the threat level on the basis of the intelligence available to them, will continue to assess this throughout today and in the days ahead. Later today, I will travel to Manchester to meet the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police, Ian Hopkins, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, and members of the emergency services who have come to Manchester's aid in its moment of need. And as I announced last night, the general election campaign has been suspended. I will chair another meeting of COBRA later today. At terrible moments like these, it is customary for leaders, politicians and others to condemn the perpetrators and declare that the terrorists will not win. But the fact that we have been here before, and the fact that we need to say this again, does not make it any less true. For as so often while we experienced the worst of humanity in Manchester last night, we also saw the best. The cowardice of the attacker met the bravery of the emergency services and the people of Manchester. The attempt to divide us met countless acts of kindness that brought people closer together. And in the days ahead, those must be the things we remember. we hold in our minds should not be those of senseless slaughter, but of the ordinary men and women who put concerns about their own safety to one side and rushed to help. Of the men and women of the emergency services who worked tirelessly to bring comfort, to help, and to save lives. Of the messages of solidarity and hope of all those who opened their homes to the victims. For they are the images that embody the spirit of Manchester and the spirit of Britain, a spirit that through years of conflict and terrorism has never been broken and will never be broken. There will be difficult days ahead. We offer our thoughts and prayers to the family and friends of those affected. We offer our full support to the authorities, the emergency and the security services as they go about their work. And we all, every single one of us, stand with the people of Manchester at this terrible time. And today, let us remember those who died, and let us celebrate those who helped, safe in the knowledge that the terrorists will never win, and our values, our country, and our way of life will always prevail.
Prime Minister Theresa May there addressing the nation in the aftermath of that terrorist atrocity committed in Manchester last night. 22 innocent souls dead and one soul which I think even the atheists among us would be quite happy to see burn in hell for all eternity. Theo Usherwood, LBC's political editor, is there. The identity of the terrorist is known to the government, to the authorities, but they won't reveal it or release it yet because they're investigating links or possible collusion. That seemed to be the news line to emerge from that address, Theo.
Yes, that is the top line of Theresa May's statement. As I'm talking to you, the podium has just been taken away and she's getting in her Prime Ministerial car to go up to Manchester. 59 injured, many of them with life-threatening injuries being treated in 8 hospitals across the northwest region. Theresa May spoke movingly, didn't she, at the end, where she said that the cowardice of this lone attacker was met by the bravery of the people of Manchester, those who opened up their homes, those who provided free taxi rides to many of those in need and needing to get home or to a place of safety. As you say, the authorities do know the identity of the attacker, James, but they don't want that name to be revealed at the moment, and they're not willing to confirm it at the moment. What usually happens at this stage is that links are investigated. The authorities will look to try and seek out their associates, people they know, people they work with, family members, relatives, and speak to them to just try and find out whether this individual was acting alone or had any help at all, and if they did have help, to bring those people who provided it to justice.
Theo Usherwood, many thanks indeed. More perhaps from Theo on this programme, more certainly from Theo in the course of the day. And he mentioned the Prime Minister's comments about the way the emergency services and members of the public mobilised to help the affected. I don't normally do this because I find them a little bit trite and pointless, but someone sent me a quote from an American television presenter called Fred Rogers that I hadn't come across before, and I wondered whether you had, because it rather stopped me in my tracks. When I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, "Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping." That's my country. That's my culture. That's my values. And deep down, I think it's everybody's. I have phone lines open, and I'll keep them open for as long as you keep calling me. We're not asking pat questions, tight questions. We're just sharing and despairing and acknowledging as well. I think this is possibly the most important thing of all, acknowledging that some people are drawn towards fury and fear. It doesn't make them bad people. It really doesn't. It's again not dissimilar to some of the rhetoric we've employed over the last couple of years when seeking to distinguish between the people that sell lies and the people that buy them. The moral difference between someone that sells lies and someone that buys lies is absolutely immense, but it's increasingly difficult in the modern world sometimes to tell the difference. So if you are persuaded that every Muslim in this country is a potential terrorist, and the only way you can make your children safe is to, I don't know, throw them all in a jail cell or deport them to a country they've never visited to before, I'm not even here to hate you. I understand why you are where you are. Most of you. There will be some people who are indulging hatred as old as humanity itself, but that is fear and fury. That's what fear and fury do to us. They turn us into people we would rather not be. And although it may be an uncomfortable truth to acknowledge, it is exactly what the terrorists seek. It's exactly what they desire, and that is not in any way a safeguard or a guarantee that they won't be successful. You will look askance at somebody who looks Asian later today. You will look askance at a woman in a headscarf or a face veil. You will look askance at the mums and dads at the school gate when you pick the kids up later. You will feel slightly differently. And the choice we have as human beings, I'm going to say as Christians, even though it's probably going to turn out that religion played a very large role in these events, and so perhaps to reach for religion is not appropriate, but I can't help who I am any more than you can help who you are. As a Christian, we're never going to be able to turn the other cheek on an atrocity like this, but we could at least remember the values on which our society has been built. Values of love and peace. And those who reject love and peace, they get rejected by us. Worst thing you can do, someone who rejects love and peace, is to join in and reject it yourself. Call for hate and anger. But I'm not hating on the people who feel that way. The belief. It might seem like an odd parallel, but it was the first. Doing this job makes you think an awful lot about why people think the way they think. The great privilege I have is being able to ask you and get your explanations and to fight the gut reaction to take against someone. You know, to fight against that sense of outrage and disgust, and try and work out why someone feels the way that they feel. And for me, it was the coverage of the McCann story that signalled a real breakthrough moment, because people were saying things to me that I found absolutely repellent. I mean, so almost incomprehensibly callous and cruel. And I refuse to believe, perhaps naively, probably naively, but we are where we are, that people are actually made that way. Their callousness and their cruelty is somehow part of who they are. So why would you do that? And the answer is to reassure yourself that it can't happen to you. So by hating on the McCanns, you reassure yourself, whether it's conscious or subconscious, you make it all their fault, then it can't happen to you. That fickle finger of fate will never find itself pointing at your family. And the same is true of this. If you really believe that it's possible to safeguard you and yours against this sort of insane action, this insane behaviour, undertaken ordinarily and usually, and details are still not fully emerged, but the mood music seems pretty consistent. Undertaken in the name of an ideology or in the belief that it will win you entry into heaven. You want to take against, as a result of that, absolutely everybody who is of the same, ostensibly of the same faith. I get it, because that way you think, if we chuck them all in the sea, or we lock them all in a jail cell, or we intern them or deport them or whatever it is, that way you think you'll be safe. And that doesn't make you a bad person, thinking that way. It makes you profoundly wrong, but it doesn't make you bad. Horrible things will happen to good people for as long as there are human beings on this planet. And what you can do to prevent them from happening is employ courage and wisdom. Courage and wisdom. And maybe with enough courage and enough wisdom, they'll happen less and less and less. But if you possess neither courage nor wisdom, you're unlikely to be helping. 23 minutes after 11 is the time. And staying with the parental angle, although by no means excluding people who aren't parents. We're all children after all, aren't we? Or were. And just wondering what you do next. I always think back to July the 7th. We were on air for that. And I can't remember when normality returned. After the Westminster Bridge terror attack, it was remarkable how quickly we kind of picked ourselves up, dusted ourselves down, and started all over again. I think after the July the 7th attacks, it was a matter of days rather than weeks. I know that and many of you, because you told me, we were a London-based radio station at the time. We're national now, of course. So you made a point of getting on the Underground, made a point of getting on a bus, because normality is, well, I guess normality is the best way to fight abnormality, and there's nothing more abnormal than the kind of attitude that sees these atrocities unfold on our shores. So I don't know. It's just this idea I have that try to understand why people have done things, and sometimes the answers won't be quite as repellent as the things that they've done prove to be. 24 minutes after 11. Nicole's in Tunbridge. Nicole, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello.
Thanks for taking my call. Apologies if I don't come across well, as I've never called before, so I'm a little bit nervous at the moment. But just letting you know what happened this morning. My husband woke me with the news, what happened, so I went on my phone straight away. He left work and my 10-year-old daughter came in. She got into bed with me and she looked at me. She's a very quiet 10-year-old. She's not confident, and I know when she wants to ask me something, I can tell the look in her face. So she looked at me and she'd heard what my husband had said. And she said, Mummy, and I said, okay. I said, something bad has happened. And she said, what is it? And I said, there was a bomb at the Ariana Grande concert. And she said, why? And I said, I don't know, babe, I don't know why. And she said, what has it done? And I said, unfortunately, it's killed some people that were at the concert, but we don't know exactly what's happened. And she said, why were they mad at Ariana Grande? She said, I don't understand. And I said, no, I don't understand, sweetheart. But she kept just saying to me, why? And I just don't have an answer for her. She loves Ariana Grande, not the music so much. She's into Diana Ross. She's a bit of an old soul. But she loves Sam and Cat. She watched it on rewind until I literally wanted to
Sam and Cat is the second programme. That's the spin-off from Victorious, isn't it? Yeah. Featuring Cat Valentine.
She was obsessed to the point where I wanted to throw my TV out the window. I couldn't watch it anymore. So, and she's just gone to school with such a sad little face, and I don't have any words. We talk through everything, me and my little girl. Like,
well, then you're already helping her. Just the fact she can ask you. I don't know what I'm going to do either, and I'll talk to my wife and we'll work something out. But I wonder if telling them that some people just hate happiness would be helpful.
But then she still won't understand that.
Well, none of us are ever going to understand, are we?
And I just wanted to say this. I'm not religious at all, so I can't offer prayers to anybody. But if there's any of those families that are listening, me and my daughters will go to bed tonight thinking of you.
Bless you.
And I'm heartbroken, and I don't know where we go. I don't know what to say to her. And I don't want to ignore it, because I don't think this is something that should be ignored. After the July attacks, I got married literally the day after. So it was kind of like we were on autopilot. So I put that to the back of my mind, which I probably shouldn't have done, but life takes over. But for this, I don't know. I don't know what to say to her, because I know she's going to have lots of questions, because she thinks things through. So I know she's going to take the day. I don't want to scare her.
No, I know, and you're a mum and you care and you love the bones of her, and although this will sound a little bit glib, you will work it out, I can tell. You'll find the words, and you have to find some, and it will just be explaining that some people are the polar opposite of what we are. They believe the polar opposite of what we believe. They think they'll go to heaven by doing evil, and in a Christian country we normally teach our children that you go to heaven by doing good, although few of you questioning my description of Britain as a Christian country, which is probably fair in terms of statistics and the rise of agnosticism and atheism. Nicole, thank you. I have to share some breaking news now. The Arndale Centre in Manchester has just been evacuated. The terror level in the city will be at the highest possible level at the moment, so vigilance will be even higher than it is ordinarily. That evacuation, please God, will prove to be unnecessary, an unidentified package. But as things stand, the Arndale Centre, which is a very large shopping mall in the middle of Manchester, we're just hearing that has been evacuated. More on that development as and when we receive it. If you're just tuning in and you're busy at work or running the kids to and from school, Prime Minister Theresa May has addressed the nation and revealed that the identity of the suicide bomber who killed 22 people in Manchester last night is known to the police, but they are choosing to withhold that information for the time being as they investigate any possible collusion or cooperation with the murderous terrorist. I think we're all in a position, aren't we, to trust their judgment on this one. Andy Burnham has spoken movingly, the Mayor of Manchester, so has the Prime Minister Theresa May. Somewhat oddly, Donald Trump has won a lot of new temporary admirers with his description of the killers as evil losers and his refusal to portray them as monsters. I suppose the fact that he was breaking bread and doing multi-billion-dollar deals with the regime that many people, I think, rightly regard as sponsoring Wahhabism and this particular brand of terrorism across the world, casts something of a shadow over the sentiments or the feelings behind his words. But if we focus on the words, I think he's onto something. Evil losers. I'm not going to sit here and portray you as a cross between Darth Vader and the child catcher out of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. You've done something huge and horrible, but you are small and pathetic. You were small and pathetic, and I'm not going to let you turn my emotions, turn my hatreds up a notch against people who had nothing to do with what happened in Manchester last night. And nor should any of us. It's 11:30 as we continue to talk to each other, in large part about events in Manchester last night and some of the broader issues thrown up by such atrocities, such acts of terror. I mentioned to you a moment ago that police have evacuated the area around Manchester's Arndale shopping centre, largely rebuilt, of course, after an IRA bomb detonated in 1996, the largest bomb, I think, ever to be detonated in Great Britain since World War II. Vincent McAviney has made his way from the Manchester Arena to the Arndale Centre and joins us now with the latest.
Well, James, I can see the Arndale from where I'm standing. I'm not actually able to get close to it. Police have been evacuating people from that centre. There are reports that a man has been arrested and that sniffer dogs were seen going into that building. I can hear an alarm sounding, but police here have kept the caution tape up. They're not allowing anyone to approach it. So I'm still down by the arena. Everything here is a little bit on edge last night. Between myself and the Arndale is Cathedral Gardens, which is a remembrance park for that bombing back in 1996. Last night they had to do a controlled detonation of a suspect device that was found there. It wasn't actually a munitions device, but obviously here security is intense. There is a large police presence across the city. A mile-wide radius around the arena is currently shut down, and I'm seeing footage on Twitter coming through of lots of people who were keeping calm, carrying on, going to work, having to run out of the Arndale Centre. So there is some panic there at the moment with this latest development.
Described by police as an incident. That detonation you just described, when you said it wasn't an explosive device, does that mean it wasn't a suspicious device in any way?
No, the police said that they weren't sure of what it was, I think, so they took the precaution of detonating it, but they said it wasn't a suspicious device. That was in the early hours of this morning, and the police actually tweeted to warn people in Manchester that was going to be detonated, not to panic about it. That happened about an hour and a half after the bombing here at the arena.
If you managed to get hold of anybody who was close to the events in the Arndale Centre, Vinny, we'll come back to you imminently. Vincent McAviney live for LBC, just outside the Arndale Centre in Manchester, which, as you've heard, has just been evacuated. Police describe themselves as dealing with an incident, and there are some reports that a man has been arrested. Last night, of course, 22 people were killed as a result of a suicide bomb described by police as an act of terror. And it is the aftermath of that and the knowledge that it was aimed at children. I don't know we ever get our head quite around that, do we? The fact that it was aimed at children, it's the ultimate manifestation of evil. It may be an odd parallel to draw, but geography lends itself to the comparison. Reading a lot this week about Ian Brady, the Moors murderer, and the sheer depth of his depravity. To target children is something that everybody struggles to process, and the question as a parent that you find yourself inevitably framing is that if we can't process it, what chance have they got? Nazrul is in Tower Hamlets. Nazrul, what made you pick up the phone?
Hello, James.
Hello, mate.
Hi there. Thanks for taking the call.
You're welcome.
I'm really shocked, mate. I'm really saddened. My name is Nazrul Islam. I'm really proud to say that I'm a British Muslim. I was in Manchester yesterday, actually, when that happened, but I was in Oldham. Basically, when we left from London for the Corbyn speech from Hull, then we thought we'd go to Manchester. So we were so excited on the way going and all that. And as soon as we got there, after a little while, one of my friends turned the television on news, and that's when we saw the incident, the cowardly attack, and we were shocked, mate. I mean, we were chatting about the campaign and this and that in the speech, but as soon as we saw that, we just stunned, and we were lost of words. Kids. I mean, how could someone do that to kids? It's absolutely unspeakable, mate. You know, we were just shocked, and we started doing prayers for them there and there. And sorry, mate, it's not the first time I'm calling, and I thought, well, I had calling.
That's what we're here for today. Just to get it out, just to share, just to recognise the horror of what happened last night, but also to recognise the absolute necessity of pressing on and not being broken.
Absolutely, mate. So when we were sitting down and watched television, we saw like 19 people there. It was like, I think 1 o'clock or so. There was 19 people dead, and about 49 infants. And we were like not very far, a couple of miles from where we were like even. And we were absolutely shocked, mate. And we were about to make a move. So we would have been back in London about maybe about 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
But we couldn't even move, mate. I just got home now. Literally now. About 20 minutes ago. As soon as I got in, I just hugged my kids. And, mate, I mean, basically, it's just, I'm a Muslim. I don't know if someone, who has done that, if he's a Muslim or not, but it's just basically, I mean, now it's time to get together. And they're just doing it to divide people, mate, from one another. We should show them that we can stick together and we can be united. And, you know, it's just a cowardly act, mate.
I hear you, Nazrul. And until someone shows me a bomb that is capable of killing according to faith or ethnicity and actually somehow targets its victims according to its faith or ethnicity, you have to recognise that the people who undertake these attacks do so indiscriminately, which should give the lie to some of the nastier responses. But I've been at great pains this morning to stress my understanding of some of those responses. Nazrul, you take care, mate. Make sure you get some sleep. They've released the first name of a victim from last night, the first of the 22 to be named, and that name is Georgina Calendar. It's going to be a long process. How old? A teenager. 18, I beg your pardon. 20 minutes to 12 is the time. 18-year-old Georgina Calendar, who's the first of the names to be released by police. There will, of course, be many more in the course of the day. But for those of you who don't know the sort of ins and outs of a news story like this, it's obviously, probably. But the reason is that they have to be sure that families are properly informed and that nobody wants to be driving along in the car and hear a name come out on their radio that they haven't been forewarned about. So the plan is, or the process is, that the name will only be released when the authorities and the families concerned are comfortable that everybody who needs to be told prior to the public release has been told. Nazrul, oddly enough, on his way up to the Northwest yesterday to see a Jeremy Corbyn speech. Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the Labour Party, has offered his response to events last night.
Absolutely shocking news. It's the most appalling act of violence that's taken the lives of young people who were at a music event to enjoy themselves. People must be allowed to enjoy themselves at a music event. This is an appalling act of violence against people, and it must be totally and unreservedly and completely condemned. During the night, I've been following events, and I spoke to the Prime Minister early this morning, and we discussed the danger to people, the security needs, and also the great work done by the police, the fire and the ambulance services in supporting people during the night. Any support needed by any of our services must be given, and we must support those people that have suffered so much, those families that have lost young ones, those families that still don't quite know what is happening with their own children. This is the most terrible and traumatic time. In these circumstances, we have to come together. In these circumstances, a city and a community comes together in solidarity and in strength. So we carry on. We don't allow these attacks and these people to divide us or prevent us from leading the decent, normal lives that we all want to lead. I spoke to the Mayor of Manchester, Andy Burnham, about this overnight as well, and he sent out a very strong statement saying exactly that. And he also thanked cities all around the world that have sent their solidarity to Manchester today, as indeed I do myself.
And your message to the families of those involved?
I'm terribly sorry and terribly sad for you. There can be nothing worse than losing a child in a situation like this. We have to put our arms around them and support them, not just today, but in all the very difficult days to come, because trauma like this doesn't go in a day or two. It's there with them for the rest of their lives. We have to give them all the support we possibly can, and also make sure we live in a safe environment in the future, and we live in safety together. But we do not allow our communities to be divided by this kind of appalling, atrocious act of violence.
Jeremy Corbyn, leader of the Labour Party, speaking a few moments ago in response to the sickening attack at the Manchester Arena last night. Prime Minister earlier spoke of the sickening cowardice of the perpetrator. It is the worst attack ever to hit the north of England, although the previous target of terrorist activity, the Arndale Centre in Manchester, has in the last few minutes been evacuated. More on that story as and when it develops. If you're just tuning in, we're told that one man has been arrested at the scene, and that the shopping centre in the centre of town, rebuilt pretty comprehensively after that IRA attack in 1996, has been evacuated. It's coming up to 11:45. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Phone lines remain yours. They're also fairly busy, but please, if you just want to get something off your chest, if you just want to talk, if you just want to contribute, then the number you need is 0345 6060 973. It's 11:45. We understand that a 23-year-old man has been arrested in connection with the Manchester Arena bombing in South Manchester this morning. It also appears that the evacuation of the Arndale Centre is over. People making their way back in. A suspicious bag, as we suggested, suspected and hoped. A suspicious bag found, but the area has now been made safe. We continue our conversation until Sheila Fogarty takes over at 1 o'clock. The other development in the last few minutes is the release of the first victim's name, Georgina Calendar, a 17-year-old girl who was at the concert with her friend and whose photographed with her Ariana Grande, actually, although you'll forgive me for not having absolutely top-notch recognition skills on the stars that pop up on those programs, and again, that just adds a new level of heartbreak to proceedings, doesn't it? Because you give a name to what was previously a number, and the humanity becomes ever more present. Lisa's in Camberley. Lisa, what made you pick up the phone today?
Hi, James. I really, really appreciate you doing this morning. My daughter and I are meant to be going to see Ari, as she calls her, on Thursday at the O2 Arena in London.
Yeah.
And, well, obviously we don't know if it's going to go ahead, but part of me just mourns that she's had a piece of her childhood taken away from her. You know, it's like you were describing your children at the concert that you went to a week before, and how much joy they had. And we bought these tickets when they first came out, and we told her a fib and said, oh, we couldn't get the tickets in time. We're going to have to look closer to her birthday. And we gave them to her birthday on the 8th of May. And she did a double take at the tickets. She thought they were money in her card. Did a double take and was just so excited and was crying and so happy to go. And this morning I had to go upstairs and tell her that it might not go ahead because, as she put it, some crazy person decided that it was a good idea to blow people up.
You told her, you gave her the full picture.
Yes, I like to be honest with them.
That's the way to be. 11-year-olds are a curious age, aren't they? Mine, I've got one the same age, and they're this mixture of adult in waiting, and then sometimes you can still see the 5-year-old dancing around in their eyes. Absolutely. And she seemed to take it so well, but still waters run deep. Yes,
so I'm waiting for the extra questions to come up, and I said to her that we might not be able to go. And understandably so, but part of me also thinks that we should carry on. We should stand together and not give in. And how do we as a society progress from this? It's gone from policemen to children.
Yes. Gosh, yes, it has, hasn't it? From people who wake up every day knowing that they could be exposing themselves to that sort of danger, to the very last people on the planet that we ever think will be. Will you go, if the concert, if they don't, I mean, by all means, tell me to mind my own business, Lisa, but if the concert does go ahead, and I'm not aware yet of any announcements or indications either way, would you be keen to go? I mean, saying what you've just said.
I would go.
Good.
I would also have the discussion with my daughter whether she would want to go.
Of course, yes.
You know, I don't want to be afraid.
No, and forgive me, in the most pragmatic and sort of cool-headed of terms, these sort of events will never be safer than they are in the immediate aftermath of an atrocity like the one in Manchester last night. I hope that doesn't sound irresponsible when I say that, but you know what I mean, don't you?
No, it does. It does, because, you know, we're vigilant and then it ebbs because we can't be vigilant. You can't be vigilant 100% of the time. It takes too much energy and too much resource to constantly be on your guard. So, yes, it will probably be one of the safest concerts if it goes ahead.
Yes.
But it's, you know, it's just those poor families. My heart breaks for them.
What? Just give us a flavour, if you can, of why, because all kids have got favourites. What is it about Ariana Grande that is that renders some 11-year-olds like yours insensible with adoration?
I don't know. Like you said, it started with Victorious.
Yes.
So we had the Victorious posters all over the wall, and then it slowly started focusing, her attention started focusing on Ariana Grande, and then it went from that to Sam and Cat, and then to the music, and she has cat ears, and she does her hair up like Ari, and she calls herself an Ari-nator, and it's amusing to watch.
And she's kind of grown up with her then, and gone through stages of her own life in reflect, and that's why these concerts, I think, unless you've got a little girl that age, there's no real equivalent because we had pop stars growing up, and we had actors and TV stars, but we had very, very few people who kind of pretty much appealed to every sense, every area of taste. I hope, I don't know what to say, but I know that, like all brilliant, loving, committed parents listening, the fact that you're answering her questions and talking to her has got to be better than not, hasn't it? Leaving things to fester, leaving things unanswered, and leaving things in the darkness.
I think so, and thank you so much. I think it really, really helps people just to talk about what's going on in their lives and how they are impacted by this.
I hope
it really helps.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. And rest assured that I needed it just as much as you did today. There's no altruism or charity involved in the decision we took at 10 o'clock this morning. 11:56 is the time. Johnny is in. Remember, as I bid farewell to Lisa, it frees up a phone line for you. If you were close to events in Manchester last night and have a perspective we haven't heard, you're particularly welcome. But otherwise, as Lisa just explained and indeed illustrated, it's just one of those mornings where we just sort of value each other's company. Johnny's in Market Harbour. Johnny, what would you like to say?
Hello, James. Really, I just want to say what Lisa's just said, and it's nice just to talk about it. I always have my son who's 25. He always comes over on a Monday or a Wednesday, and last night we were all sat in the garden, and our 9-year-old daughter, I told her I got tickets to Little Mix at Donington.
Gosh.
And they were just the joy and elation. You know, he was teaching her dance moves, and in the garden, was just sat there just watching, you know, just literally running around like an idiot. You know, knowing she's going to this, because I work in festivals, but I can't take her with me.
Sure.
So to get her to get her to see Little Mix, and she adores and all that. And then this morning, taking her to school, having heard her, I was watching the news, and she was going, trying to explain, because she said, is it the Muslims? And I was trying to explain radical Islamists, and I've in the past been slightly right of centre in certain opinions, but it actually got me talking about it, that it isn't all Muslims, and 99% of Muslims are peaceful people. And what I'm trying to say in a very bad way.
No, mate, you take your time.
Thrown me, I've always had an opinion. I've always been kind of sometimes slapped down for voicing my opinion. I see myself as, very much in your corner, in some areas, and your nemesis on the other side. Right. So it's just, But it was just trying to explain to this.
Got so many nemesis. I don't know which one you're referring to. Are you going to? Okay. Okay. Well, thank goodness for that. The key question becomes what you're going to do, because I mean, I don't know if today's the day to start trying to work out how anybody could hate the idea of your 9-year-old dancing to Little Mix, or my 9-year-old dancing to the Vamps, or Lisa's 11-year-old dancing to Ariana Grande. And if you just excuse me for a moment, Johnny, I have to tell Lisa, who I know will still be listening, that the World Tour has been suspended, according to TMZ, the showbiz website, which is ordinarily very, very reliable. In fact, no, they quote her manager, Scooter Braun, as saying, "We mourn the lives of children and loved ones. We ask you to hold the victims, their families, and all those affected in your hearts and prayers." And then they report that sources have said that the tour will be suspended in the wake of that attack. But the question that you and I have as dads is do we essentially punish our children for the crimes of these terrorists?
I just think it's just the lowest form of cowardism to target, and it was, you can tell it was specifically targeted for when people were leaving, because there is a certain apathy. It's over, and there's security and more. They're clearing up. They're just getting people out safely to the tubes, the trains. So somebody walking into the venue isn't as less a threat. It's seen as less of a threat because they're not trying to get in illegally or do anything before the concert. So I just think it was just so planned and I just can't imagine the pain that.
No, nor can I. Not for a minute.
I don't want to. I don't know. I just wanted to say I really appreciate what you've done today, James.
Oh well, I haven't done anything except give a microphone and a phone line to people like you and Lisa and everybody else who's rung in, and we'll spend another hour doing the same. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. It's 12 noon now. Well, I hope this doesn't sound strange, but I've found myself in positions similar to this on a few occasions, and I'm going to add the words "thank God" to my next observation. The number of fatalities and injured has stayed the same throughout the 2 hours that we've been on air. I was fairly grimly expecting it to rise, and it still may, but as things stand, 59 injured, 22 dead, and 1 terrorist consigned. It's enough to make you hope that hell exists. I've said that before and I'll say it again. The idea of him being able to shuffle off this mortal coil insensate and unpunished adds almost a sort of spiritual insult to the human injury that he sustained. We're just talking, and forgive me for sometimes sounding a little bit emotional myself. I'm not being a very professional journalist today, and I don't really make much apology for that. There are days for rolling news and days for objectivity, and there are days for trying to share the one thing that we all have in common, which is humanity. Michelle is in Felton. Michelle, what would you like to say?
Oh, yeah, morning, James.
Hello, Michelle.
I've got an 8-year-old, and only yesterday morning we were talking about maybe going to a concert or a gig this summer, because he's really into music and dancing, and it seems quite ironic now that we were talking about that. And my worry is he came down this morning, and I was crying because the news was on, listening about a woman that couldn't find her daughter.
Oh, mate. Oh, no.
And he said to me, why are you crying, Mum? And I said, well, there was the Ariana concert was on last night, which he knew about. And I said, some horrible person's let a bomb off. And he went, oh my God, she's not dead, is she? And I said, no, luckily she isn't, but lots of teenagers and young children in the audience probably are.
Yeah.
And he said, he said, that's awful, Mummy. And he sort of just said it like that and rolled it off. And my worry is I was in London a couple of days after the Westminster attack, just only last month. And I said to him when I went in, I said, look, you worried about Mummy going in? And he said, no, Mummy, that was a couple of days ago. It's fine. It'll be fine now. And him and I know where
you're going with this, Mum.
We watch the news together.
Yes.
We talk politics in our house, and he knows about wars. And we went to Turkey last year, and we were there a week after the coup, and we were explaining why we wouldn't, we maybe couldn't go. We spoke about Paris. We talk about those things, and I worry if I'm desensitizing him, because he was sad.
Oh, I thought you were going the other way. I thought you were saying, I wonder whether because we struggle so much with it, we kind of pass that on to them, whereas they process it in a rather more simple way, a rather more simple fashion. We raise them to know about goodies and baddies, to know about good and evil. They're kind of...
it could be that. I'm hoping now you're saying that, James, it is. I was thinking, because we speak so openly about it, am I...
I don't think you are. No, I'm no expert. I'm no
Yeah.
expert. But I mean, there's two things to say to that. That it's never going to be normal, but it is happening. So you can't pretend or create a world in which it isn't, because then when that world is shattered by reality, you've done him a grave disservice. And perhaps sometimes we underestimate them. I thought that's where you were leading me, to the suggestion that you know, make sure you answer all their questions and give them everything they need to process the information, but don't necessarily expect them to struggle with the process as much as adults do, because adults have so many other inputs and influences.
You know, and I, you know, bit sound bites on the news this morning, and, you know, I'm in and out of work and, you know, and in and out of the car and stuff, and just, you know, crying. It's, you know, and I think, well, he'll probably come in from school and talk about a swim lesson.
Yeah, and you know what? That's what we need. It'd probably keep us a little bit clear-headed as well, just to remember that for them it's something awful has happened. You pick yourself up, you dust yourself down, and you start all over again. And oddly, we're good at that. I don't know about you, Michelle, but I'm good at that when it's adults. Even when it's a train I could very easily have been on, or a bridge I could very easily have been walking over. Somehow, as an adult, when adults are victims, you can do that thing where you just sort of close down the past and look to the future. But and I'm like you as a parent, the fact that it was children involved this time means that I'm really struggling to imagine that life will ever quite be the same again. But it will be, won't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my husband was in London the day of 7/11, and I was frantically couldn't get hold of him for 2 hours because he was working up there and he was in that area. And we got married, you know, a week after, you know, 2001 September. And so, you know, it does. But it's just, I just think, oh God, you know, my son is seeing this thing now through an 8-year-old, and is he really processing it, or is he? I don't know.
Well, the fact that you're watching him and worrying means that he's well looked after, doesn't it? But the chances are, now that I hear you describing it back to me, they'll probably do a better job than we do of accepting it and moving on. And we're there to catch them if they don't. Take care, Michelle. God bless. It's 9 minutes after 12. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I don't know that making sense of things would be an accurate description of what we're doing. Just sort of recognising some of the shared realities, and I don't know that you can ever make sense of it. You know, whether it's because you think you're going to go to heaven and get rewarded with 72 virgins, or whether it's because you're repulsed by Western freedoms, or whether it's because you want to build a caliphate in the Middle East and somehow blowing up kids at a concert in Manchester is going to advance the cause, or whether it's just because you're a warped inadequate whose only ever attempt of being noticed by the outside world would be to do something absolutely and unspeakably vile. We will probably never know. But I'll tell you something for nothing. For the 22 families mourning their lost and loved ones, it's never really going to matter much. And that's why today we've tried to focus most of the conversation on their experience and our empathy and sympathy for them, rather than adding to the cult, if you will, of the culprit. And then I had a little argument, a friendly argument, a constructive disagreement with a colleague this morning about what you do with the information, how you cover stuff like this. Other countries don't quite do it in the way that we do. There are some troubling threads on social media describing what the British newspaper journalist will do in pursuit of stories at times like this. As a dehumanisation can take place, the same sort of process that we'll see tabloid hacks of old sort of try to steal family photographs of, for example, a murdered schoolgirl from the mantelpiece of the home that they've managed to sort of talk their way into. It's an apocryphal tale, but I'm pretty sure it has happened. And I don't know, the idea if you don't even name the person responsible. Some people say, don't even mention the cause, don't even do this. I don't know where the line is. I'll tell you that there's no objective algorithm for that kind of thing. Everybody makes judgments. The problem is that every time one media organisation pushes the envelope in pursuit of clicks or money or readers or viewers or listeners or whatever it may be, as soon as one organisation pushes the envelope of acceptability an inch further than everybody else has gone, then everybody else follows them. And then the next one has to push it an inch further. And then everybody else follows them. Until suddenly in a world where consumers count for everything, in a world where numbers are everything. Suddenly you've pushed it so far, you perhaps haven't realised that you've left your own soul behind by allowing some people to say some of the things that they say. 11 minutes after 12 is the time. Justin is in Liverpool. Justin, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello, mate.
Do you know what? Very, very strange morning. I was driving. I'm self-employed, and I was driving to visit a school. I'm not going to name the school or the area, but a school in the northwest today. And I was driving there ultimately to sell something, to make money. And I felt guilty.
Why?
Doing that. It was just. It was a very surreal experience driving along the M6. There was lots of black Range Rover police cars flying up the M6 at that time. You knew what had gone on. It was all very surreal. And I arrived at this school for a meeting and was told that the lady was delayed. And the lady said she can be a couple of minutes. And there were some children within the school that were a bit upset. They were at this concert last night, and they were moving them to another classroom where it was a bit more quiet. And another lady came in and said, listen, we've had some bad news. And at this point, you started to feel extremely uncomfortable. I'm like, oh my God, I just want to get out of here now. And I even felt guilty for that. You've got to excuse me, I'm a little bit nervous. I wouldn't normally ring in, you know. But I felt compelled, as quite a few of your listeners have, to say this. And this lady came in who I was having a meeting with, was quite clearly distraught. And I just said, look, listen, you know, we're going to catch up another time. Don't worry about it. And she's like, no, I don't want to cancel anything. Listen, it's not a problem. Quite clearly, there's far more important things going on. And as I left the school grounds, and I literally couldn't wait to get away. So I left the school grounds. There was teachers outside on mobile phones, and there was a couple of pupils that were quite clearly upset. And you're sort of starting to think, well, either the worst has happened to one of their pupils, or they're missing, or it's just a massive upset. And you're sort of driving along, and I'm thinking, the 22 people's families who have been affected dramatically, horrifically, nobody can ever comprehend that. But the wider effect on other people is absolutely gargantuan. And I, you know, just to finish that point, I rung my wife. I've got a 7-month-old and a 10-year-old, and I rung my wife. My 10-year-old was just going to school, and I didn't realise he was in the car. And rung my wife to tell her, and he was there. And I said, I didn't realise he was in the car. And he said, Dad, did you see the news this morning? And I said, I did. And he said, did you see it was at that concert? I said, I did, son. And he said, we were there last year. We were at the WWE, and we left that entrance. We left out of there. And I said, listen, son, don't worry about it. You don't have to worry about things like that. You go to school. That's for adults to worry about. And it is, though, isn't it?
I think you might be onto something, Justin. I think you touched on it with was it Lisa earlier, the idea that maybe we're forgetting what children are like. Children process things much more differently than we do.
Differently.
Horrible things happen in children's worlds, and the world doesn't end.
And the world doesn't end, and he'll go to school, and he won't be thinking about that now. He goes to a Catholic school, and it was probably mentioned in Assembly this morning. But tonight, when he gets home, all he'll be bothered about is going on his PlayStation and doing various other things. And that, because we're the adults, we're his parents, it's us to worry about things like that. But I hear people say, we've got to stay strong, you know, it's the stiff upper lip and this. And I'll be honest, James, I'm starting not to have any truck with this anymore.
Same here, mate. Same here. Get it out. Have a cry. Have a hug. Have a cuddle. I mean? Absolutely, I do.
I've got a strong stomach. I lived in London in the late 80s, early 90s. I left not long after the last bomb. I lived in the Barbican. All my windows went out. God. I've got a pretty strong stomach. But this is a whole new level. Attacking young people and children.
Some of them having, genuinely, some of them will have been the happiest they have ever been in their life.
Exactly. And somebody said to me earlier on, can you imagine, because I would do this, and you would probably do this.
Go on.
My son has been to a concert before without me or his mum, but with his aunt.
Yeah.
Or with his eldest cousins who are 18 or 19 or 20, and has gone with them.
Yeah.
And can you imagine that will have happened last night, and the parents aren't with that child to help and protect them? And that, on any level, is just wrong.
That's
why this has happened.
That's the word impotence is the only one I could think of earlier, Justin, when I was trying to describe what you've just made a much better job than I did of describing. That sense of not... Because it's the hardest thing as a dad and a mum to recognise that you can't look after them forever. You can't protect them from all harm. You can't keep the hooded claw from their door.
No.
Little Liverpudlian nod for you there, mate. But you... but I don't know quite... Well, that's the point about the stiff upper lip. You should say stuff like this out loud, recognise it, acknowledge it, and then hopefully process it, rather than pretending, which is kind of what the stiff upper lip means. That you can be untouchable, you can build an armour that will never be penetrated. No one ever does that, do they? No one ever does that.
No, and they never will. And do you know what? And I've come home today. I wasn't meant to be working from home. I've come home today, and to see my little baby, my wife's there, my little lad's at school, and I'm going to go and pick him up and bring him home. And just think, when it's home time,
Get off me, Dad. Get off me. I want my tea. Just stop it, will you? Just leave me alone. But you obviously just wanted to hold him and hold him close. Justin, you take care, mate.
Take care, James.
Right, there you go. It's 12:17. Some other political leaders have added their reactions and responses to the terror attack in Manchester last night. I think we'd hear from Andy Burnham. He's the newly elected mayor of that city and was speaking earlier.
I'm not alone in saying that my kids have been at that venue at that particular time of night. I think everybody here has a similar experience where, the chaos of the event ending and the kids coming out all happy and excited. For individuals to go there and seek to terrorise those children and those young people and their families in that way is the most appalling evil act that I can imagine.
Everybody's appalled by this, awful tragedy and attack. But do you think communities now in Greater Manchester have a responsibility to if there are people that they know who may well be responsible, surely there's got to be a change in sort of mindset now, hasn't there, do you think?
Of course, if people have any information, they should make that known through the counter-terrorism hotline. I mean, there is a way for them to do that. But what I would also say is that people perhaps should avoid some of the ill-informed comment on social media. Take the lead from what the police are saying here before people jump to any conclusions about this attack. And for goodness sake, let's not descend into a situation of mutual distrust between our communities. The individual who carried this out is an extremist and doesn't represent any of our communities. Does not represent the people of Greater Manchester in any way, shape, or form. And I think it's very important that message is heard.
And are they any closer to identifying the attacker at all?
That's not for me to comment on.
Mr. Burnham, as the Mayor of Manchester, what's your message to the people in Manchester of how to cope through what's a horrific situation for the girls, the young girls that were there last night, their families, their friends?
Well, I'm just so proud of them because they are already coping. And they responded in the best possible way, with generosity, with kindness. That was, I think, humbling, and that sends a message to the whole world about what kind of people we are here. And that for me is just something that I think should make every person in this darkest hour, every single person in Greater Manchester will be proud that people responded in that particular way, and I'd like to thank them for doing that. It is a case of return to business as usual as far as possible. We will not let these people win.
Andy Burnham, Mayor of Manchester, speaking there to journalists. A short while ago, since then, the Prime Minister has confirmed that the identity of the suicide bomber at the Manchester Arena last night is known to the authorities, although as investigations continue, including the arrest of a 23-year-old man in South Manchester, in the Chorlton-cum-Hardy area of Manchester, if you're familiar with that part of the world. They won't reveal the identity of the perpetrator, of the terrorist, until one imagines all pertinent lines of inquiry have been exhausted. Interesting conversation with Andy Burnham, interesting angle, one that we may explore further tomorrow. Today has been very much a day for empathy and the victims, rather than turning our fire upon people who weren't responsible for the atrocity last night, but perhaps share a trait or a faith, ostensibly, with the people who were. And Andy Burnham mentioning this question of communities doing more, being asked about it. It's an understandable line of inquiry, but again, it's never going to provide a foolproof solution to these problems. I think the average, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, the average number of murders in Britain every year usually hovers just below the 600 mark, there or thereabouts, between 500 and 600, depending on which year you're looking at. And you could reasonably point out that every single one of those murderers has a family. Every single one of those murderers has a partner, perhaps, or a child or a parent. And it's not, I don't think, helpful to suggest when an atrocity like this occurs that it must by definition have been known about in advance by family members. The last terror arrest in this city of London followed upon the Westminster terror attack and involved a man arrested with you'll remember, a collection of knives, a bag of knives, making his way to that part of London. And his arrest was a direct result of his own mother's intervention. When Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, was last here, I asked him about that and suggested that had represented a significant and healthy development in community relations. And he said, no, it's commonplace. Ordinarily, the tip-offs are going to come, if they come, from people who are close to the potential perpetrators. But let's not be, what's the word I'm looking for? Let's not be naive and suggest that every time somebody takes a human life in this country, it was something that could have been prevented by earlier intervention from someone who knew the murderer. 26 minutes after 12 is the time. Jay is in Manchester. Jay, what would you like to say?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm a first-time caller.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
I'm actually heartbroken. I've not really slept much. I've got 2 children. I'm a Muslim as well. And, I've been hearing friends and other people on radio calling up saying that this guy, well, we don't know if he's a Muslim, but I'm assuming he is. And they're saying that he's not Muslim, or he won't be a Muslim that's done this. My issue with that is where people start saying, or especially Muslims start saying, Islam is a religion of peace.
Yes.
Islam is not a religion of peace. Islam is just a religion.
Yes.
And
it's full of individuals who could be violent or peaceful.
Correct. Yeah. Yes. And my issue is that there's people in the community that have a platform, and I don't feel they're doing enough and not calling this out. There's a big elephant in the room, which is that there is Islamic scripture that advocates extremism. And I think there's a time for reformation, and our leaders in the communities need to stand up and call it out, because they need to admit, number one, that we do have a problem within Islam and its scripture, and it does advocate some violence. Look, is
that not a given? I mean, it's certainly if we had I think it's Islam's turn in the spotlight on this, and quite rightly so. I can find scriptural references in the Old Testament and elsewhere that also endorse, selling your sister into slavery or whatever it may be. But Islam's scriptures appear to be the ones that inspire these atrocities at this point in human history more than others. But I don't. Well, you tell me. Is it coming from a pulpit? It seems to me it's more likely to be coming via a kind of dark net or weird website, and possibly with links back to Islamic State in Syria and Iraq, but not in the sense that you go to Friday prayers and get encouraged to become a terrorist.
No, I agree, and you don't. I mean, I'm not practicing anymore.
Sure.
And I've become more and more liberal over the years. I've come from a very conservative Muslim background. I used to practice, and I stopped doing so in recent years, just based on some of the experiences.
How hard is it to do that? Do you because you let your family down, or in their eyes?
Difficult. Yeah, I mean, I'm a minority in a minority, because they actually, I think if my parents actually found out, they'd actually be heartbroken.
Yes.
Yes, okay. It's coming up to Ramadan now. I won't be fasting.
But they'll think you are.
Not really, because I was telling them I work and I've not got time. I'm just busy working.
Sure.
But they probably want me to. I don't attend the mosque anymore. It's not. I don't think it's important. I think God lives in your heart, not in the mosque. But coming back to what I was saying, I think as Muslims, we're too busy romanticising about this peaceful version of Islam. It's never existed in our religion. From the death of the Prophet Muhammad, after his death, his predecessors were all murdered by Muslims. Muslims have always been at war with either one another or other people. It's in the history of our religion.
You can almost substitute the word Muslim for humans on that.
Yes, correct.
We go back 200 or 300 years in this country. We had siblings murdering each other because they were the wrong flavour of Christianity.
Yeah, I mean, going back 20 years ago, I remember when I was attending sixth form college, and I had a group of chaps belonging to an organisation called the HT, Hizbut-ullah Tahrir. I don't know if you know that.
Yes, I do. It was prescribed, but they were pretty much encouraging well, they were prescribed for a reason, weren't they? They were encouraging what they called jihad, what you and I would call mindless terrorism.
They did their best to try recruiting me 20 years ago. And what their selling point was, we need to infiltrate the government and senior positions in the government organisation to bring an Islamic caliphate in this country. And I thought they'd been smoking pot or something. I thought they were crazy.
I wouldn't be allowed.
Yeah, clearly not. But yeah, I mean, even more recently, I've experienced extremism myself from within the Muslim community. So going back a few years ago, my wife used to wear the headscarf. And clearly, based on my liberal sort of views, and as I've sort of adopted and changed over time, I didn't feel it was necessary to wear that. Neither was it a Islamic or religious mandatory requirement. So I asked her to remove it, and she did eventually. And but the backlash she got off that from some of the Muslims within the community was...
You describe a rock and a hard place for young Muslim women. I'll let it pass because you're on the radio and maybe I misunderstood, but it sort of gave me the impression that it was your decision that she should stop wearing the headscarf rather than hers. But she'd get gypped from one side of society for wearing it, as we know. There's an awful case yesterday of a woman who miscarried at 3 months after being kicked in the stomach by someone who objected to her wearing a headscarf. So you get gypped from one side of our country for wearing it, and then gypped from the other side of your community for not wearing it. It's possibly a pertinent point of reflection. I'm a little late for the news, Jay. Thank you. I wanted to hear lots of what you had to say. It's just gone 12:32. 22 people murdered, 59 injured in an attack on the Manchester Arena last night, undertaken by a lone suicide bomber, although a 23-year-old man has been arrested in connection with that crime in South Manchester while we have been on air today. Also, while we've been on air today, the Arndale Centre, scene of an IRA attack in 2006 that witnessed the largest detonation of a bomb in Britain since the Second World War, has been both evacuated and then given the all clear. So the aftermath of this horrible event will continue, and more details will emerge. One victim named so far. I don't even know on a day like today what you do with that information. I've told you what her name is, but there's a temptation, and rolling news didn't exist when we were kids, did it? You'd never had rolling news. You didn't have this television stations dedicated to really 24-hour news 7 days a week. A lot of the time that's going to involve a sort of 20-minute repetition cycle. I've got the girl's name burnt in my brain at the moment. I don't know how long it'll stay there, but I don't know what purpose is served by me repeating it every 20 minutes or so. It's just becomes, between you and me, it's almost the rhythm of the radio on a day like today. You have a few established facts and you feel this sort of bizarre reflex to repeat them. So I don't know what purpose that serves. I'm uncomfortable repeating it. I can't help thinking that if I knew her, every time I heard her name, it'd be like another shard through my heart. But as the names are released, we will share them with you. I just don't know how many times we should share them in an hour. 12:37 is the time. You'll forgive me for doing a little bit of thinking out loud this morning, because I guess, in a sense, that's what we've all been doing. Keith's in Shrewsbury. Keith, what would you like to say?
Oh, good afternoon, James.
Hello,
Hello. I'm on so many levels with what's happened over the last 12 hours, to be quite honest.
Go
on. I've been crying. I'm a 50-year-old man. I've been crying all night. I have a 14-year-old daughter. Last Thursday, I took her to the Ariana Grande concert at the Genting Arena in Birmingham. Like your previous caller, Lisa, I had bought some tickets. I played a trick on my daughter. I told her that I was going to take her. I dressed as a bodyguard with full suit, earpiece, the whole lot. I said, I'm going to protect you. We're going to have fun. She was a bit unsure about it, but sure enough, when we got there...
Why was she unsure, Keith?
She was... I think she didn't want me to embarrass her, I think, on that level. Protective dad. I made a video, put it on my YouTube account, made a video, and it was the most amazing night I've ever had. Looking at my daughter, the crowd, the kids, they were all kids, 7-year-old kids, all around me. It was the energy and the electricity was absolutely staggering. And to see my daughter's face, her favourite pop star. But it gets worse for me, James, because I'm a Prince fan, been a Prince fan all my life.
Yeah.
On the 13th of November 2015, Prince was due to sell tickets to come to the UK, play in Birmingham. And as you remember, on the 13th of November, the tickets didn't go on sale, and then the Paris attacks occurred. Prince had played the Bataclan.
That's right.
I've got CDs of his performances in the Bataclan. He pulled his European tour, and at that time I felt devastated that ISIS or terrorism had taken Prince away from seeing him again. And now my daughter's got that feeling that terrorism, after we've been to see Ariana Grande, has stolen our happiness and our joy and our memory. And I feel so guilty for the people who've lost their babies. Having only 5 nights ago, my ears are still ringing from being in Birmingham and the joy and the happiness. It's just unbelievable. There's too many levels for me to comprehend this. My daughter's first concert was to see Prince in 2014 at the Genting Arena. We hadn't been there since, and all we spoke about was Prince prior to going, and now the whole lot. I mean, she's feeling that devastation that I felt all those, 18 months ago.
Why guilty? Why guilt? Why guilt, Keith? It's nothing. Guilt is something you can only feel guilty over things you can control, isn't it?
The joy. We last night when I was watching the news, all them pink balloons that they floated down in Birmingham. My daughter tried. We couldn't get one. We couldn't get a pink balloon. We were close to the stage, 20 feet away from Ariana Grande. And all the pink balloons fell, and I saw those pink balloons, and I started crying, James.
Oh, mate.
I started crying.
Oh, mate.
Absolutely started crying to see those balloons, and my daughter couldn't get one. But they had confetti cannons at the concert, and during the performance, the confetti cannons exploded, and we realised that it wasn't confetti. These were actually Ariana Grande dollar bills with her picture on, and we could see them floating down. People are scrambling for them, and I reached up and grabbed one of these dollar bills, and I said, "Jessie, I've got one. Don't worry about the balloons." And I moved it, and there was two stuck together, so we got one each. And her face was an absolute picture.
How do you think, and I don't know how much thought you've given this today, and don't feel bad about letting your emotions out. The worst thing you could do is
I let my emotions out, James. I've cried.
Good man.
I've tried to sleep. I've watched it. I've cried. My daughter bought an Ariana Grande T-shirt, £30. We don't care.
You're still crying about that, Keith.
£30 for a little T-shirt.
Aye.
And now, on the back of that, it's got all the dates, and it's going to be, the reminder's just going to be devastating for her. My daughter lives with her mother. She's coming to me tonight, and I've yet to see her. I don't know how she's feeling at the moment. She's in school, but I know she's going to be so devastated.
She is, but she's also got you. She's got a mum. She's got, there's light at the end of her tunnel. Can you even begin? You describe that happiness, mate, in a way that it's a good job I'm on the radio, frankly, not on the telly. But if How can anybody hate the happiness that you just described? I saw it myself a week ago. I was at a concert at the O2, watching my friend James McVeigh and the Vamps, and my 9-year-old, I've never seen her like that. How could anybody hate that happiness?
You can't. There was a real energy.
Oh, it's like nothing else.
Happiness,
isn't it?
Just a pure energy. And I'm not an Ariana Grande fan. I wanted to play a game with my daughter and get dressed up and do the bodyguard and go through the whole lot and protect her. And I think now I couldn't have protected her, to be honest.
Oh, mate.
I couldn't have protected her. And as we were leaving the venue, and she finished bang on 10:30. As we were leaving, my daughter wanted to get some posters and wristbands, and we separated. And all I can think of in my mind now is, what if that had happened? We separated. I went to get some water from a vending machine, and she went to the merchandise, which is about 50 feet away. And I'm thinking, God, what if that had happened?
Yeah, well, it didn't. It didn't.
I know it didn't.
It didn't.
I know. It's just
senseless.
I can't comprehend why anybody. These are little kids around me having so much fun on Thursday, and we're still on a high. Cloud 9 is still there, and all of a sudden, it's just been taken away, absolutely and utterly taken away. You can't. And I feel for all those families that have lost their children. I feel for Ariana Grande, who loves her fans. You know, it's beyond description what's happening.
Well, you've made a decent fist of it, Keith. Look after yourself, mate. You don't need me to tell you this. Hold her tight when she gets in from school tonight. I think a lot of us be doing that. And listen, this isn't an exercise in emotional externalizing or anything like that. It's a natural reaction to horrendous events. It's 12:45, and you will no doubt continue to receive comprehensive coverage of events in Manchester last night, events for which, according to Reuters, Islamic State have claimed responsibility for that attack. The Prime Minister revealed earlier that the identity of the suicide bomber was known to authorities, but they will withhold it until all pertinent inquiries are complete. Melissa is in Watford. Melissa, what would you like to say?
Hi. When my radio switched on this morning, I was expecting to not hear Nick Ferrari. So the minute I heard him, I knew something was wrong. And I sort of switched onto the news and saw what was happening. And I thought, what on earth am I going to tell my son?
Yeah.
He's only 5. You know, and he does hear the news. I mean, it's not
Do they? Do you think to think that you can shield them from it is naive, isn't it?
It is, because they really do. I mean, earlier this week he was asking me, why did Ian Brady kill those children, Mummy?
Wow, okay.
He's 5.
Yeah.
He's 5. You know, so I thought, I've got to get ahead of it this time. I've got to tell him that something's happened and help him to understand what it was. So on the way to school, I had a little chat with him and said that something terrible happened, that there'd been an explosion. I don't know why I didn't want to call it a bomb, but I just called it an explosion. And I said some people had been hurt and some people had died. And he said, that's really sad, Mummy. He said, you know, were there any animals? I said, no, there were no animals, darling. He said, were there any children? I said, yes, there were some children, sweetheart. He goes, that's really bad. He said, was it a bad man? I said, yes, it was a bad man. And I mean, how do you explain that to a 5-year-old? And he said, well, what happened to the bad man? I said, well, he died too. And he was very quiet for a minute. And he said to me, you know what, Mummy? He shouldn't have done it in the first place. And then he wouldn't have died. And I thought, in some ways, that's just such a straight way of dealing with it. You know, in his mind, he kind of got... He's just desserts, I suppose, for want a better way of explaining it. In his mind, it was all right because... You know, he'd been dealt with.
Yes, I understand that. We've kind of nudged at this, haven't we, this morning? This notion that maybe, because we've come at the whole topic today from a parental point of view, I couldn't help it, but the idea that maybe the children are going to be better than us at dealing with these sort of things, and we spend all our time worrying about how we're going to help them, possibly they don't need... We should be helping ourselves a bit more.
I think in some ways, I felt in some ways a little bit reassured that he can still see it in such black and white terms. That for me and for everybody who's rung in, you can hear them going, what if it'd been me? What if I'd been there at that time? And it's horrendous. As a parent, it's your worst nightmare. You can't think of anything more horrific to happen, and all your brain does is run on and run on and run on. But thankfully, the children perhaps haven't quite got a grasp of that yet. You know, this is what happened.
Or they just have a simpler... The world is simpler to them, and bad and good are real and present realities. And we sort of look for reasons, and it's why it's tempting for so many people to think that they can find the answer in a book and look, read this, that proves why they're all doing it. It doesn't. Well, the reason they do it is because people are weak and impressionable and evil and vain and desperate to be noticed and nasty and lacking. And there's a billion different reasons why people do evil things, and that's been true as long as we've been on this planet.
I mean, I've literally just been sitting here and I'm watching the clock. I cannot wait to pick him up. I want to go and give him a big cuddle. Hopefully, his day hasn't been terribly affected by it. I know that as a school they will have talked about it. And he said to me as he walked into school, Mummy, I will go and speak to my friends and I think we should pray for the people who died and their families. I said, he's 5. And then he went off to play. And then he went off to play.
Says it all.
And, you know, maybe that's what we have to try and cling on to, that we're also frightened and terrified that it's going to affect the children so much, but I think in some ways it's more awful for us because we can sit here with the what ifs.
I don't know if that I'm frightened and terrified describes where I am. I'm just so sad is closer to it. Just so sad. And if you focus on the victims, that's all you can feel. And then, of course, it leaches into fury and fear, and what you do with that fury and fear is the mark of how civilised your society is. For example, in an absolutely barbaric, uncivilised society, such as the one that Islamic State seek to create, then you turn that fury and that fear into violence, murder and hatred, into othering and into treating people differently according to things over which they have absolutely no control. If you don't, then you're civilized. It really is that simple. Talk about a clash of civilizations. It's not a clash of civilizations. There is civilization, and then there is Islamic State and people who, like them, believe that we can't live together. 12:54 is the time. Natalie's in Towville. Natalie, what would you like to say?
Hello, James. Thanks ever so much for taking my call. Hi there. Yes, I, like your previous caller, Melissa, sort of heard the news first thing this morning. In fact, one of the, I get the alerts, the LBC alerts come through to my phone, and I just went completely cold. I really did. And I just thought, not again. And I'm terribly saddened by what's happened. And like yourself, I have a young daughter. She's 13. Major Ariana Grande fan.
Really?
Yeah, big fan of hers, and went just recently to the O2 to a wonderful concert. I think it was R5 or something like that. And I can't keep up with them, but yeah, I thought to myself, I need to tell her about what happened last night. And I was doing her hair, getting her ready for school. And obviously I told her, and the look on her face was just so sad, and the confusion. And my first instinct and my first action was to give her some rational information that she could have as a bit of a tool when she goes into the proverbial playground today, because we all know that there's going to be, the slandering and the labeling, of the Islamic faith and Muslims. And I said to her, all Muslims are not bad, even whatever you might hear. And I just think it's so important that youngsters, especially of that impressionable social age, do get educated that whatever religion it is, and in particular here with Islam, it is a peaceable, beautiful religion. And I've had the privilege of living in a community, an Islam community.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it is obviously a very important territory. And Jay in Manchester earlier, I no offence to you, but I preferred the way he put it. He said it's not a peaceful religion or a violent religion, it's just a religion. And the point about all religions is it's full of people, some of whom will be peaceful and some of whom will be violent. So, I call myself a Christian. It doesn't mean I agree with Christian fundamentalists about issues like homosexuality or a woman's right to choose. I wonder sometimes whether or not, when we try and portray a religion as homogenous, we actually kind of do ourselves and do the followers something of a disservice. There are lots and lots and lots of peaceful Muslims, but events in Manchester last night show that there are some bloody violent ones as well.
Absolutely. Well, as I said to her, there's a murderous extremist, who hide behind the religion to further their misguided ideologies and fanatic views. And I don't think that any of us can really get our head around it, but just for her to understand that it's not the norm. And I just think, what really got me is that, and this is, I think, what they are trying to do is, my daughter turned around and said, "Mummy, I don't want to go into London anymore, and I'm not going to go to a concert because I don't want to be a part of that." And I said, "My love, that's exactly what they want to hear."
Well, yes and no. Again, I think in the short term, it's probably something you could accommodate and just wait for the. Insert your own figure of speech here, but wait for time to heal some of these wounds. I'd be loath to sort of encourage or coerce a child to, in the interest of bravery, to do something they really didn't want to do. But yeah, obviously you're right. And obviously I keep thinking back to the July the 7th attacks upon this city and wondering how we managed to get back to normal so quickly. And part of the reason is that, I don't know, somehow it's part of the deal of being an adult, is that you run various risks as an adult. You move every day closer to the end of your life. That's just a sort of statistical inevitability. But when children are taken from us in this sort of fashion, the temptation to fight fire with fire or to fight hate with hate is possibly greater than it is when adults are the victims, which makes those of us, I suppose, who are determined never to let hate trump love all the more important. Thank you, Natalie.